of the heart flows the issues of life. And many of these issues stem from one's emotional, mental, and spiritual condition. Such issues may oppress, stifle, and even stagnate one from living a healthy and fulfilling life. So how does one progress past such issues and achieve a state of emotional, mental, and spiritual healing? There's help, so open your heart and prepare your mind. It's time for healing to take place in your life. You're in tuned to Talking with Dr. Toy, a holistic approach to emotional healing. And now, your host, licensed professional counselor, Dr. Toy Lisa Mitchell.
It's just me and you. I feel so lost, 'cause I don't know what to do.
Well, good Sunday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to the broadcast podcast. So grateful that you are here. I also want to not only welcome you, but also give you my purpose. My purpose is to provide a holistic approach to emotional healing. Therefore, my mission to provide a holistic and restorative therapeutic approach in addressing and resolving issues that adversely affect the emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being of individuals who desire to enhance their quality of life. Also want to do a self-care check. You know how we do it. How are you? And what did you do for self-care this week? Again, I am encouraging you to take a little bit of time out to really implement a sacred pause into your day. I really would love for you to do that. Okay. Self-care is so important. Self-care is so valuable. So please make sure that you're implementing that in your system. And again, this concept of community care. People committed to leveraging their privilege to be there for one another in various ways. How are you showing up for others, and how did you allow others to show up for you? Again, that is so very important, to have that balance of self-care and community care. And we've also talked about this aspect of cultivating more self-awareness in our system, right? Where we have an awareness of our own values, our aspirations, those things that include our thoughts, how is our thinking, right? What are we experiencing as far as emotions? What are we experiencing in our body? Yes, I love that you can cultivate enough time in your schedule to really, what we talk about, those 3 A's. Remember what we talked about: awareness, right? Attuning and attending, right? And I love this and this basic definition of self-awareness. Listen, self-awareness is your ability to perceive and understand the things that make you who you are as an individual, including your personality, your actions, beliefs, emotions, and thoughts. That is so very much important. And so that's why today, one of the things that I really want to talk about, we talked about the power of resistance, especially those things that are unethical, immoral, and how the power of resistance helps us to develop our voice, right? And helps us to connect to the truths of who we are versus those narratives that have been created by others. And so there's power in resistance, especially in those cases. However, I want to talk about another resistance today. You know, we are entering into the month of March. And so something that's really kind of been on my heart that I want to share with you all today is this aspect of internal resistance to things that may be helpful for us, right? And one of the things that I have been really promoting, really promoting and emphasizing, has been cultivating reflection time in our lives. I have really been promoting that time and time again, especially with all that is happening in our world. Let me say this, there's a lot going on that can cultivate anxiety, stress, and worry. And not only the things in our world, but the things in our lives. And so it makes it that more important to be able to cultivate times and moments in our lives where we are really implementing some reflection. And we talked about this a little bit, but I think it's worth talking about again. Some reflection that can cultivate aspects of revelation in our lives, that those sacred pauses that we talk about. And so some of what can emerge even from cultivating a sacred pause in your life, you may want to think about, has there been some times in my life that I have maybe resisted things that may be helpful for me, that may be helpful in ways to improve how I show up in relationships, to improve how I see myself, to improve how I see others? Has there been some resistance? And sometimes we kind of deem that as an internal resistance. And now let me say this. There are powerful reasons why we would resist, right? Because sometimes when we talk about this, there's this concept that says roll with resistance. Basically, it talks about really honoring that there are some reasons why we are resistant. So it's not just really hammering yourself and say, I'm a bad person because I'm resisting some things that could help me. And so it's not about judging, right? It's about exploration. It's about curiosity. It's really about awareness, right? And so there's no judgment in this process, but I do think it would be helpful for you to really lean in, to really understand, one, is there some resistance going on in my life? Is there some resistance when there are people who love me and people who care for me, who want the best for me, but it's difficult for me to receive feedback, right? Feedback that may be helpful. So it may be difficult for me to receive that. Is there some resistance when it comes to seeking help for yourself, right? Because sometimes there's definitely this mentality, and this goes back to self-care, where some people may experience some guilt, some guilt in really taking care of themselves, are really trying to navigate life in a way where they are honoring themselves. And so there can be some resistance there too. So this aspect of internal resistance is not just it's not a thing to judge yourself. It's really something to be aware of and really connect with why am I resistant? Why am I resistant to this? Let me give you an example. I think it has been difficult for many of us to create some sacred pauses in our lives, to slow down. And so some of this may be is that the more, I've talked about this a lot, this aspect of avoidance, right? Because sometimes slowing down may mean that I really cultivate a moment where I come to myself. And maybe there's this thing where you are unsure of what you will discover. And that lack of certainty of the unknown can keep you on this perpetual cycle of, let me continue to distract myself. Let me stay busy. Let me keep doing and doing and doing, instead of really pausing, right? And so some of what may be happening is that, just again, the awareness and why that resistance may be coming up is that there's a fear there. that there's this fear that if I let my guard down, if I pause and slow down long enough, will I be able to manage what may come up for me? Maybe there's something in the back of my mind that I'm thinking about. I am really trying to bury and run away from. I don't want to face it. And slowing down may put us in that position to definitely come face to face with it. Definitely understand that. And so the avoidance, the keeping busy and the doing keeps me in a place where that's something that I feel I can control, that I can manage, right? Makes perfect sense. However, some of the things that we do acknowledge as well, as I talked about, is that by not cultivating those sacred pauses in our life, by not cultivating that and being in this space, what can also happen is that we may miss moments of being in tune to what could really help us, that what could really heal us or even put us on the road to restoration. And so today I want to talk about this aspect of internal resistance, right? Not from an aspect of condemnation, but to really begin to understand why that may be. Why there is internal resistance in your life to things that are helpful and to things that are beneficial and healthy for you. One of the things that we just talked about is really understanding it from a perspective of not judging it. Right? I think I've said this time and time again, but I want to repeat this, is that when we move towards judging something before we understand it, we negate really cultivating understanding of that. Because we've already judged it. And when we've judged it, we've deemed it to some degree negatively. And those things that we negatively judge, what do? We want to push them away. We want to avoid them. We do not want to connect with them. We're not curious about it. We're not trying to explore it. We're trying to bury it. And some of that we're trying to bury, there may be information that could be helpful for us to tune into, that may be some answers that we are looking for, that we've been wondering about. And so I think that is so important that we first acknowledge that what is happening to me, let me seek to identify how I'm feeling towards that. Yeah, I've definitely got to put that in there. Because basically, too, I want us to just have this balance. I don't want us to always be in our heads about it. And that's where many of us stay. We stay in our heads. We stay in our intellect, these cognitive spaces. We stay there. Why? Because, again, something that we can control, something that we feel comfortable doing, that's a protective mechanism. And we don't feel safe really connecting it with our heart, those emotions. And we've talked about that before, but I think this is a beautiful place to reiterate that, because again, it definitely reminds us that there's some reasons and why we may resist, have this aspect of internal resistance. So it definitely, there's some reasons. But also, too, I want us to connect with how I'm feeling, right? When there is something that may be helpful and healthy for me, and I'm like, no, I don't want it, or no, I'm not ready for it. Whatever that is, whatever that internal resistance is, part of this maybe also understanding, what does it bring up for me emotionally, right? What does it bring up for me emotionally? Because part of this may be that if someone is really asking you to, and this is kind of what we are talking about today, just implementing that sacred pause in your life. And there's this level of discomfort. And you're like, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to come up for me. I may not be able to handle it. Those are the thoughts. But what are the emotions, right? What are the emotions underneath that thought? And we alluded to it earlier. Maybe part of the emotion is fear. I'm scared. And some of us may not admit, right? Because we think, of course, we think, fear is a negative thing. It's an area of weakness. And so we may not want to admit that we're fearful. But it may be helpful for you to know that this is what I'm experiencing so that you'll know how to address it, right? But if we didn't judge it and we're able to identify, pretty scared to go there. And I didn't judge it, but what I did acknowledge is that, I'm experiencing it. What I believe that does is that it allows an openness to be able to explore what is needed for me in that moment, right? To address that fear. Maybe what is needed is a word of affirmation that I can do all things through Christ. Maybe what is needed is that I need support to help me walk through this, right? That I don't want to walk through this alone. So maybe some of that fear may give me an aspect of, maybe I need to lean in to some of my support systems so they can also help me navigate this situation so I don't have to do it alone. So do you see what I did there? Instead of judging the fear, well, that's weakness, I shouldn't be afraid and all this. And so now my mind gets wrapped up in what I shouldn't be doing or anything like that. Now what that does, it allows me space to be able to say, okay, what is needed for me? Yeah, I'm afraid. So what is needed for me in that moment? And I do think that is much more helpful than the judging piece, because when we seek to understand, then we can seek to find solutions and things that will help us versus the shame, the embarrassment, and all that comes with solely judging it. Now, let me put a pin here. I'm not saying that we don't judge our actions or the actions of others. There is such thing as immoral and unethical behavior. So I'm not saying that. Right? Because there is some aspects of moral, right and wrong and all of that. So I'm not saying that we just totally throw it out the window. But what I am saying is that we don't want to solely land in that space, because I do think that it can hinder some aspects of revelation and exploration. Now, can I say, you know what, I can do this better, or let me try again, or man, I didn't really like how I showed up in that moment. Not saying that we can't evaluate those things, not saying that we live life without evaluating how this is acting upon other people or even ourselves. I'm not saying that. But what I am encouraging is that we cultivate some balance, right? Because for many of us, we have some harsh criticisms of ourselves anyway. So it doesn't take much for us to get to this space where we are constantly just experiencing and engaging in negative self-talk. And we talked about how the brain veers towards that anyway. So part of this process is that really seeking balance of how to do that and how to do that effectively. Now, why is this important? And I want to talk a little bit more about this because it is something that we may want to spend some time in. And so when we talk about just that internal resistance, here's some strategies for that. And I love this resource that pointed this out. Number one, it talks about this. Listen, practice self-compassion. Right? And here's the thing that I say to people. When we are our own worst critics and we're so hard on ourselves, someone said this and I love this. They said, maybe think of it in a way as to, would you say this to a friend? Would you say this to a friend that you loved and cared for? Would you talk to them with this negative self-talk? Would you talk with them the way that you talk to yourself? And when that question is asked, you have some people who say, well, no, I wouldn't tell them that they're stupid and they shouldn't do this. I wouldn't tell them that. But again, you would speak this to yourself. And so what you've determined is that I wouldn't tell a friend that because, again, it wouldn't be helpful. It would be hurtful. And you don't want to hurt that person. But yet and still, you would say it to yourself. So one of the things that you may want to practice is that self-compassion. And if you struggle cultivating that in your system, then maybe use this notion of, okay, what would I say to a friend? Would I treat a friend like this? What would I say to a friend? And if that is healing and restorative and positive, then say those things to yourself. I love this where it talks about treat yourself with kindness in order to move forward. Because some of us may stay stuck in that aspect of shame and embarrassment where we solely judge. And that keeps us stuck. Keeps us from moving forward. Keeps us from growing. So that's one strategy that I think would definitely be helpful. Number two, love this. Define your why. Define your why. When we think about just strategies to really understand and navigate resistance, understand your why, right? I love this. Shift from a mindset of what you should do to what you want to do. I think that's key. I really do. Because when we get, we talk about those shoulds and all that as those kind of cognitive traps, that brings about definitely guilt and all of that. So part of this process of practice for you may be, instead of saying should, what do you want to do? If you find yourself experiencing resistance, again, cultivating understanding why. Why is that? And what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Okay. I love this too. Take tiny steps. I love this because when you understand like what it is that you want to do, take it step by steps. What do we say? What is that we say? Do not despise the day of small beginnings. Do not despise small steps. No, it may not be the huge leaps that you want to eventually take, but small steps can lead to huge change. So take tiny steps. And when you take tiny steps, basically what that does too, it cultivates mastery. And what I mean by that is that if I've been able to accomplish and achieve these smaller steps, that cultivates more confidence and even motivation to take subsequent steps. And so take the smallest possible action and then build from there. Taking tiny steps. I love this next one. Leverage your support system. I just spoke to that. When you understand what you are experiencing, right, what you're feeling, then you can more adequately really define, what do I need? What would be helpful? And so when you do that, maybe one of your needs is to lean into your support. Build, and I love what this says, build a team to help you stay grounded and motivated. I'm telling you, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and research indicates this, that even perceived support can help improve mood. Even if support is perceived, if I perceive that I have support from others, that can improve mood. So again, don't sleep on support. And we've talked about this aspect of going it alone and all of that. There are times, like I said before, there's a difference between just solitude and isolation. That's a difference. Yes, we need some solitude in our lives. Jesus took moments to be by himself with the Father. So yes, we want to cultivate aspects of solitude, but be mindful that there's a difference between cultivating solitude and isolating from others who may want to be there to assist you, isolating from others because you are ashamed or you are embarrassed, or isolating from others because you are fearful of expressing yourself in ways that may be helpful for you. So knowing the difference between that, and really acknowledging, is this the moment in my life where I need to lean in to support, to help me cultivate groundedness and to be motivated. I love this too. Embrace failure. Now, I know some of us cringed when I made that statement. What? Embrace failure? Yeah, I know. But listen, I love this because what this is saying is that we will experience failure. Why? Because of our own humanity. There's a statement that says there's no failure in God, but there is in humanity. Well, that's not the latter part. There is no failure in God. However, there is failure in humanity, our own nature. It is part of our nature. Now, again, let me express that I'm not saying that you should strive for failure. I'm not saying that. So stay attentive to my words. I'm not saying that we strive for failure. But when failure happens, we embrace it in the sense of viewing our setbacks as a natural part of the journey to success. I love how it frames this, right? That again, embracing failure allows us to see, okay, this went wrong. Let me understand, first of all, really connect. How do I feel about it, right? Because sometimes we connect failure to identity. That if I fail at something, that denotes that I am a failure. And we are conflating those two. Just because you failed a test doesn't mean that you are a failure. That's not your identity, right? Your action failed, but you are not a failure. So embracing this aspect of failure definitely does create an understanding that it's the act that failed. I'm not a failure. I'm human. I'm a human that has failed, but my identity is not that of a failure. And when I'm able to really kind of separate those two, then I can look at it objectively and view the setback as a natural part of the journey to success. Now, it doesn't feel great. I'm not saying that it feels great, because when you look at something and you had a vision and it just didn't come off the way that you needed it to, then yeah, you feel discouraged. So I'm not saying that you don't feel it. I'm not saying that it doesn't feel, I'm not saying that you don't feel anything. Yes, you may feel discouraged. You may feel disappointed. You may feel angry. But again, also embracing that failure will happen. And it does happen. Now, we can take two paths. We can either, accept when it does happen so that we can make adjustments, or we can get stuck. We can get stuck in this aspect of failure never happening, that I don't want it to happen. And we can get stuck in that loop. But what is that going to resolve? It's not going to help me to move forward. So being able to view setbacks as a natural part of the journey to success, that will help. That will help. I love this. Use visuals. Imagery is powerful. Imagine yourself doing the things that you would want to do that were going to be helpful for you. So creating a powerful visual with regards to that. And the next one, the final one, reflect and reframe. I love this, right? And that goes back to cultivating those sacred pauses, using prayer, meditation, positive affirmations to manage that internal resistance. I think these are strategies that will cultivate more awareness in our system. And not only that will help us to move forward in those things that we're seeking to do. Well, listen, that's all the time that I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, relentlessly and intentionally pursue authentic and genuine relationships vertically with God, horizontally with others, and inwardly with yourself. Number 2, maintain and sustain a keen sense of awareness and ongoing discovery about self as well as others. Number 3, take good care of you and engage in things that are helpful for your mind, body, soul, and spirit. And remember, out of the heart flows the issues of life. Let's continue to talk about it and continue our journey towards emotional healing. Until next time, bye-bye.
You've been in tuned to Talking with Dr. Toy, providing a holistic approach to emotional healing with your host, licensed professional counselor, Dr. Toy Lisa Mitchell. Please connect with me at talkingwithdrtoy.com or Facebook at Talking with Dr. Toy or email talkingwithdrtoy@gmail.com. I would love to hear your story and hear your heart regarding the issues of life you may be experiencing. Remember, out of the heart flows the issues of life. Let's continue to talk about it. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening, and please join me next week for Talking with Dr. Toy.